The winter light in Michigan looked thin enough to tear. Gray sky stretched low over the fields, and the sun was nothing more than a weak coin behind the clouds. I drove toward my son's new house with both hands on the steering wheel, feeling the vibration of the old truck through my palms. But before I even reached the driveway, a man in a black coat stepped out and held up a hand like I was a stranger. "Sorry, sir. Private event. Homeowners only." For a second I thought he was joking. Then I saw the guest list on his clipboard, my son's name highlighted, and a thick red line slashed through mine. I stayed there, engine idling, watching people walk past me with bottles of wine and wrapped gifts, laughing like they belonged. My fingers curled around the steering wheel until the leather creaked. The porch was lit, warm and gold, and through the window I saw Dylan raise a glass, smiling in a room I wasn't meant to enter. A small pine branch snapped under my boot when I stepped back. Sharp. Final. I didn't knock. And right there in the cold I made myself a quiet promise this time the truth would have its day. The winter light in Michigan looked thin enough to tear. Gray sky stretched low over the fields, and the sun was nothing more than a weak coin behind the clouds. I drove toward my son's new house, with both hands on the steering wheel, feeling the vibration of the old truck through my palms. The heater coughed warm air in uneven bursts, the way it had for years, and the radio hummed under the static like it was remembering a song it used to know. His address was pinned on my phone. It glowed faintly against the dashboard, guiding me to a neighborhood that did not exist when I was his age. A place full of new money and new stories. A place where a man could build himself a life so polished it no longer resembled the one he came from. A place he had never invited me to celebrate. I turned onto his street and saw the house right away. It wasn't the kind of place you mistake. Sharp white siding, black-framed windows, long porch lights washing everything in clean lines. A driveway wide enough for 3 cars, maybe 4. I sat there for a moment after parking, letting the truck idle. My breath fogged the windshield in slow pulses. There was something about seeing it in person that made the distance between us feel more real. Inside, warmth rushed at me, but didn't settle. It was the warmth of a thermostat set high, not of a home that carried years of lived-in heat. The walls were white and smooth. The floors looked polished enough to see your own disappointment reflected back at you. Voices floated from the kitchen, the kind of bright chatter people use when they're comfortable. Dylan stepped out first. He smiled quickly like someone checking a social cue off a list. "Hey, Dad. Glad you made it." I nodded and put my hand on his shoulder. There wasn't much else to do. His shirt looked new tailored. Mine smelled faintly of the workshop. Sabrina came around the island holding wine glasses between delicate fingers. Her smile was practiced polite. She hugged me lightly, careful not to disturb her hair or her makeup. "We're really happy you're here," she said. "Dylan's come so far. Your dad must be proud." Her voice caught half a beat before the word "dad," a pause, small enough to ignore, but sharp enough to feel. It landed in me the way cold wind finds an open seam in a jacket. I gave a quiet nod. It was easier than explaining the things pride cannot always reach. In the dining room, people stood around a large table. I saw it from the doorway and stopped. Thick oak top, steel legs, welded cross braces. My welds. My hands. My weekend spent in a garage with bad insulation and a space heater that whined loud enough to drown out thought. I stepped closer. There, along the underside of the edge, was the shallow groove I had sanded smooth after misjudging a clamp. My thumb found it without looking as if it had been waiting for me. Someone asked Sabrina where she found the table. She brushed her hair back and laughed lightly. Some rustic seller on Etsy. I knew it would fit our vibe here. Dylan didn't say anything. His eyes flicked away from mine just for a second, but long enough. I pressed my palm against the steel brace beneath the table. The metal felt familiar, warm from the room, cold underneath solid, in a way the moment wasn't. I left my hand there a beat longer than necessary, as if touching something that still remembered me. Dinner was served. Plates passed around. People talked about markets and rates and renovations. I answered a few polite questions about work, the kind that never go very deep. When one of the men asked if I still welded, I said I did. He nodded with a smile that didn't quite reach respect. In rooms like this, calloused hands don't carry much weight. At one point, Dylan leaned on the back of a chair and said something about starting from nothing. He said it lightly like a joke, but the room nodded in agreement. I watched him while he talked. His hands moved the way mine used to. Strong gestures. Certain. I wondered if he remembered the nights I took extra shifts to pay for his first coding course. The old Harley I sold so he could buy a computer good enough to dream on. The envelope of cash I slipped into his hand without asking for anything in return. Soon the conversation drifted elsewhere. Someone complimented the flooring. Someone else mentioned the upcoming launch of something I didn't fully understand. I caught a glimpse of a stack of event folders half-tucked under a counter embossed with a company logo. It made me pause. There was a faint imprint of dates, names, something that looked like a guest list. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The house was already telling me more than anyone inside was willing to say. As the evening wound down, people collected coats, finished drinks, checked calendars. I stepped toward the front door, ready to leave. Dylan walked another couple out before me. They stood under the porch light as he thanked them warmly. When I passed, he touched my arm. "Drive safe, Dad. You too, son." I walked down the steps. Behind me, I heard him turn to Sabrina. "Did we send the invitations yet? All set?" she whispered. "Partners first, then friends." The porch light made a halo around them. Their voices faded into small, warm noises behind me like I was walking away from a place I had never fully entered. In the truck, the door creaked as I pulled it shut. The cabin smelled like old metal and my thermos of stale coffee. I sat with my hand resting on the passenger seat for a moment, the same seat where Dylan used to sit with his knees pulled up and his boots leaving dust prints on the mat. I ran my thumb along the worn fabric. The truck felt too big tonight. Or maybe I felt smaller in it. The engine started on the second try. The radio crackled alive and played the opening riff of Sweet Home Alabama. Dylan used to shout the chorus out the window, his hair blowing wild, telling me to turn it up even louder. I let the song play. I kept my hand on the empty seat beside me. As I drove home, streetlights passed over the hood in slow, patient intervals. Yellow, then dark, then yellow again. Houses glowed warm behind their windows. Christmas lights still clinging to gutters' wreaths, hanging stubbornly against the cold. By the time I turned into my driveway, night had settled in fully. I shut off the engine and listened to the quiet fill the truck. The cold that night didn't come from the wind. It came from the space my son had quietly carved between us. The house stayed in my rear view longer than it needed to. A square of warm light, steady and sure, floating in the dark behind me. I watched it until the road curved and the trees swallowed it whole. Only then did I push the truck toward home, the quiet settling over me like a second coat. Inside my own place, the air felt cooler than usual. I hung my jacket, took off my boots, and let the silence close around me. It was the kind of quiet that didn't echo. It just sat there, waiting. I stood for a moment in the hallway, my hand resting on the wall the way a man steadies himself after standing too fast. Then I moved toward the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't drink, and left it on the counter. Some nights are like that. You move through rooms but don't feel part of any of them. The next morning, the sky over town was a pale, washed-out blue, the kind that promised cold without the courtesy of snow. I drove to the hardware store because routine has a way of keeping a man stitched together. The sign out front, weathered and chipped, leaned a little, as if the winters had pushed it back 1 inch at a time. When I stepped inside, the bell announced me with its usual tired ring. The store smelled like lumber and fertilizer and metal dust. It felt honest. A place where hands mattered. A place that hadn't forgotten me yet. Ben stood behind the counter, tapping his fingers in a rhythm that said he'd been waiting for customers long enough. He looked up and grinned. "Mr. McCade." "Man, it's been a while." "Morning, Ben." He scanned the bolts I set down. His movements were quick, practiced. The last time I'd seen him, he was still learning how to hold a welding torch without flinching. He'd grown into himself since then. He gave a little laugh. "You heading to Dylan's housewarming tonight?" I didn't answer right away. My jaw tightened first. Then my shoulders followed. I felt the stiff pull under the collar of my jacket. I nodded slightly toward the register. Didn't know there was one. Ben blinked like he hadn't expected that. "There's a flyer on the board up front," he said. "Place looks crazy nice." He handed me the change. I folded the bill slowly, buying a few seconds to steady whatever flickered under my ribs. "I'll check it out." The board near the entrance had always been a mix of lost pets, rummage sales, and church breakfasts. Today, one image stood out among the curling papers and thumbtacks. A glossy poster. My son's house, clean and bright under a clear sky, the kind of picture that made everything look effortless. Launch and housewarming event. At the bottom, a QR code waited like an invitation or a test. I lifted my phone-cracked screen, catching the overhead lights, and scanned it. A message flashed up, gray and flat. Private video. Invite only. Behind me, Ben wandered over. Trouble loading. Something like that. "Mind if I try go ahead?" He scanned the code with his own phone. The video started immediately, sound-sharp images, brighter than real life. A drone pulled up from the roofline of Dylan's house, while upbeat music played underneath. Then Dylan's voice filled the store. "Built this from the ground up. Did it on my own piece by piece." I watched over Ben's shoulder. The knot in my chest tightened. I didn't let it show. Ben turned to me with a proud smile. "Your kid really made it." Something in me loosened, but not in a good way. I held out my hand. "Let me see something." He passed the phone over. Years of managing work accounts and shop pages had taught me where settings tended to hide. I tapped the corner icon, expecting nothing more than curiosity to be satisfied. The list appeared. A few blocked accounts. And one real name. Mine. I stared at it long enough for the shape of the letters to blur. My thumb trembled once against the edge of the phone before I tightened my grip. I handed it back. "Looks good." Ben hesitated. "You'll be there, though." "Right, I mean it's your son. Got some jobs coming up. We'll see." The words came out steady. My heartbeat did not match them. Outside, the cold sharpened. I stepped into it, letting the door shut behind me, and watched the condensation fade from my breath. Through the glass, I could still see the poster. That house. That moment. The one I had no place in. By noon, I found myself at the small cafe off Main Street. The door chimed soft and tired, same as it had for 30 years. I saw Charlie in the back corner, his jacket draped over a chair, hands wrapped around a chipped blue mug. He looked up as I approached. "Hal," he said, voice low, like he already knew. I took the seat across from him. The waitress set down a mug of coffee without asking. Some habits never needed words. Charlie studied me for a beat. "You look like a man trying not to bleed on his own boots." I huffed a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Saw a poster this morning. For Dylan's housewarming." Charlie nodded slowly, and I scanned the video. Mine didn't load. Kid at the store tried his. "Worked fine." Charlie raised an eyebrow. "Something wrong with your phone?" He knew the answer before I shook my head. "No, just something wrong with the way I fit into the picture." Charlie leaned back, thumb tracing the mug handle. "He blocked you. Looks that way." Charlie exhaled through his nose. "World's changing," he said. "Kids build new stories and sometimes forget the old ones came first." I didn't respond. I watched a couple across the room split a slice of pie forks, tapping plates. Life moved on around us, indifferent to whatever sat between me and my son. When the coffee cooled, we stood. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, gentle but steady. "Don't let him make you forget who you are." Outside, the afternoon light sagged lower. Clouds thickened at the edges, bruised and heavy. I drove home without the radio on, letting the tires hum their own song across the pavement. At the house, I went straight through the kitchen and out to the garage. The air inside was colder than I expected. The bulb overhead flickered once before it steadied. Shadows stretched long across the concrete. My welding bench waited in its place along the wall, scarred by years of heat. I laid my hand on it, palm flat, feeling the metal's cold reach into my skin. I looked around the room. Everything in it had weight. Every mark meant something. Nothing here was for show. On the shelf, the old helmet Dylan used to borrow sat crooked. I lifted it, thumb brushing the scuffed visor. It felt lighter than I remembered, like time had hollowed it out. I held it for a long moment before setting it back. The radio in the corner glowed when I turned it on, warm orange, slipping through the dusty dial. A forecast drifted through the static. More cold on the way. I pulled the stool out and sat. The room settled around me. My breath rose in faint clouds. Something inside me went very still. It wasn't just an unreturned call or a missed dinner anymore. It wasn't a misunderstanding waiting to clear. It was a door closed quietly. A story rewritten. A father edited out. I sat there in the dim garage light, my hand resting on the steel edge of the bench, where my son's first dream once sparked to life, and I felt the weight of a truth I hadn't wanted to name. Some distances aren't measured in miles. They're measured in silence. The cold from the parking lot stayed with me long after I stepped into the garage. I kept the lights off. The dark felt steadier than anything I carried inside me. My phone buzzed on the workbench, its screen cutting a thin white line across the metal surface. I ignored it at first, thinking it was another store coupon or bank reminder. But the name pulled my eyes toward it. One of the kids I had trained years ago. A boy who used to sweep these floors while humming Springsteen. His message was short. Mr. McCade. Miss Sabrina said Dylan built everything alone. No safety net. I sat down slowly, letting the stool creak under my weight. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I picked up the phone again, read the line twice, and felt something tighten inside my chest. My thumb hovered over the screen longer than it needed to. When I opened the link he sent, Sabrina's live stream filled the dark like a small, bright lie. Her voice was smooth, trained for cameras. She talked about grit, about hunger, about Dylan, as if he had hauled himself out of bare earth with nothing but his own hands. I listened quiet, the way a man listens, when he's not sure if he's hearing wrong, or if the world changed without telling him. Dylan grew up with nothing. He started from zero. The words rolled out of my phone in a tone so confident it almost sounded like truth. My hand drifted to my jacket pocket, the one where I used to keep the key to my old Harley. I remembered placing that key on the dealership counter, trading chrome and freedom for the computer Dylan said he needed to build his first app. The memory felt warm at first, then oddly sharp, like touching metal after a frost. Another vibration. A new message. Dylan's former co-founder, the quiet one, who used to sit at my kitchen table eating chili straight from the pot, while he and Dylan sketched ideas on scrap paper. We need to talk. I stared at those 4 words, listening to the faint hum of the garage heater, trying to come alive. I wasn't sure why I said yes. Maybe a man can only swallow so much before he needs to know where the cracks are coming from. The diner he chose sat on a back road outside town, the kind of place where the neon sign flickers, even when there's no wind. I arrived early, sat in my truck with the heater running, until I saw him standing by the door, collar up, hands buried in his pockets, like he was guarding something fragile. Inside the booths were half empty, and the air smelled of burned coffee. He didn't sit until he looked around the room, making sure no one was close enough to overhear. Then he pulled an iPad from his backpack, slid it toward me with a hand that wasn't as steady as he tried to make it. I pressed the screen. A presentation lit up between us. Photos of Dylan, clean-cut, polished, framed in minimalist luxury. Lines about branding and market positioning. Words I didn't fully care about until I reached a page marked Messaging Adjustments. At the top, in a bold font that didn't bother pretending to be gentle, remove blue-collar father figure. Damages luxury brand image. I felt the air shift. A small move like the room had leaned away from me. I pushed my coffee cup aside, its ceramic scraping lightly against the table. My co-founder friend kept talking, explaining how Sabrina had pushed for a streamlined narrative, how investors liked a clean story without loose ends from the past. I only caught pieces of it. My eyes stayed on that single line, the one that cut deeper than anything said aloud. Blue-collar father figure. Not even a name. As if I had been a placeholder, something to trim for aesthetics. He lowered his voice. I didn't want to show you this, but I figured you deserved to know who's steering the ship. I nodded, the gesture slow, controlled. I thanked him, though my voice came out rougher than I planned. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, turning our reflections into thin ghosts on the glass. I didn't drive home. Not right away. My hands kept drifting to the steering wheel, then falling back into my lap. I ended up downtown without meaning to, parking across from the hotel where Dylan was speaking at an investor mixer. The building glowed like it was made to be admired, all glass, and clean lines, no fingerprints anywhere. I stood by the sidewalk and looked through the long paneled windows. Dylan stood near the front, suit-sharp shoulders, set with the confidence of someone who knew the cameras were on him. His voice traveled through the glass in faint pieces carried by the microphone he held. I never had a safety net. I built this myself. Something inside me went still. Not angry, not broken, just still. Like water settling after a heavy stone sinks to the bottom. A woman near the door caught my eye and started to smile, maybe thinking I was someone waiting for a friend. I turned before she reached me, letting the night swallow her face and the bright room behind her. I walked back to my truck without looking over my shoulder. The December wind followed me across the pavement, tugging at my coat, whispering through the empty spaces the truth had just carved out. When I closed the door and the cab fell quiet, I sat with my hands on the wheel, watching my breath fade in the cold air, and knew the story they were telling no longer had room for the man who helped write its first line. The house was dark when I walked back in the kind of darkness that feels earned after a long day. I hung my coat over the chair by the door and let my hand rest there for a moment, steadying myself. Something in me had shifted after standing outside that event hall. Not anger, not heartbreak, something quieter. A steadying weight like a man setting his feet before lifting something he knows will test his strength. I walked down the hall toward the small office. The door creaked when I pushed it open, the sound familiar enough to anchor me. The lamp on the desk glowed when I tapped it, warm yellow light spreading across the grain of the old wood. My eyes fell to the steel filing cabinet beside it. I hadn't touched that thing much since Carolyn passed. It looked the same as always, cool and stubborn, waiting for a reason to be opened. I pulled the drawer. The metal groaned like it remembered me. Inside were folders arranged in a way only I could understand. I reached for one, labeled in my block handwriting, a bit faded, but still clear. Dylan. My thumb lingered on the name a second longer than I intended. I set the folder on the desk and sat down. The chair creaked under me. When I opened the folder, the smell of old paper rose, familiar and unwelcome at the same time. I went through documents one by one, tracing lines of ink I hadn't thought about for years. Loan papers, bank forms, the cosign I had given without hesitation, the sacrifice I never asked him to repay. Halfway through, I froze. A page lay slightly out of place. Newer, brighter paper stock. I held it under the lamp, my breath catching in my throat. There was my signature at the bottom. Same loops, same tilt, the same way the D curled back into the line. But the date stamped beneath it was recent. Last year, months after I had stepped away from everything. My fingers tightened around the edges. A dull pulse traveled through my hand, up my arm, settling in my jaw. I held the paper, still searching for any memory of signing it. Nothing came. The air in the room felt heavier. I stood and crossed the room, needing to move, even if only a few steps. When I came back to the desk, I picked up the phone and called the one man I trusted with anything that smelled of legal trouble. He answered with a tired hello, his voice familiar and steady. I found something I said. He asked what it was. I kept my tone even while explaining. I heard him exhale softly through the receiver. "Send me a photo now," he said, "and bring the original in the morning." I ended the call and took the picture. The camera click sounded too loud in the quiet room. When the email left my phone, a weight settled deeper into my chest. Not fear, but recognition. Something was wrong, and it had been wrong for a while. Before I could sit again, another notification flashed across the screen. A secure link from the former co-founder. I opened it. Inside was a folder of emails threads with clipped tones and short directives. I scrolled slowly, reading every line. One message sat alone in the middle of the chain. Its text made something in me go very still. "Do not mention the father. Labor background parent lowers valuation." The words landed heavier than any insult spoken aloud. I set the phone down on the desk, face up, the screen still shining. I leaned back in the chair and let the weight of that sentence settle. Not a name. Not a person. just a variable to be removed for the sake of optics. My eyes drifted to the photo on the desk. Dylan at 16 in the garage, sweat streaking down his face, a crooked grin under the welding helmet. His hand was resting on the bench we built together. That was the year he told me he wanted to make something big. I told him what my father once told me. Do it right before you do it big. He had nodded so hard, I almost laughed. Almost. I gathered the papers from the desk and carried them to the garage. The workshop light flickered on as I pulled the chain. The air smelled of oil and sawdust, old projects, and half-lived dreams. The radio on the shelf hummed with static when I turned it on the host's voice, faint beneath the noise. I spread the documents across the welding bench, lining them up like parts before assembly. The original loan, the recent signature, the emails, the dates, the contradictions. Each piece was its own truth. Together they formed something larger. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about punishment. I was thinking about the truth, the kind that survives even when people decide to rewrite the parts they don't like. The house creaked as the wind hit the siding. A loose screw rattled somewhere near the door, a reminder that everything, no matter how tightly built, shifts over time. I walked back to the office and opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. It stuck halfway, just like it always had. I pulled harder and felt it give. Inside space waited. I filled it. Page by page, I placed the documents into a new folder. I aligned the corners carefully the way I would line up metal plates before welding them together. When the last page slid inside, I closed the folder with my palm. Its weight felt different from the others. Not heavier, just more definite. I put it in the drawer. My hand lingered on the metal a moment longer, feeling the cool surface ground me again. Then I closed the drawer slowly. The latch clicked into place, a clean, final sound. A gust of wind moved through the eaves, making the walls tremble softly. The radio crackled, then leveled out into a steady hum. A single sheet of scrap paper fluttered off the bench and came to rest at my feet. I leaned down, picked it up, and let it sit in my hand for a few seconds before setting it aside. The room settled. So did I. All right then, I said barely above a whisper, letting the quiet answer me back. I sat in the workshop long after the daylight gave up on the windows. The cold had settled into the floor, into the steel legs of the benches, into my hands. I didn't turn on the radio or the heater. I wanted the quiet, the kind that forces a man to hear what he's been avoiding. My fingers brushed along the edge of the old welding table. The grain of the wood caught against my thumb, the same uneven ridge I remembered sanding with Dylan when he was 12. I saw him standing there again, goggles too big for his face, waiting for my approval, and flinching when I barked corrections at him. He always tried to hide the flinch, but a father sees it even when he pretends he doesn't. I sat down heavily, elbows on my knees, and let the air settle. The smell of pine dust and cold metal wrapped around me, familiar and patient. It had been here through every version of me, the good and the ones I'd rather forget. Somewhere between the quiet and the cold, I heard Carolyn's voice. Not clear, not like a dream, but soft in the way memories surface when a man is worn thin. Maybe the boy's scared he'll never be enough for you. She used to say things like that when Dylan shut down after one of our arguments when I came into the house still carrying the heat from work, and dropped it where he could feel it most. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The truth came slow like a bruise rising to the skin. Dylan wasn't rewriting the story just to look bigger. He was running from the version of me who made him believe he wasn't enough unless he did everything perfectly. The version who taught him hard work but forgot to teach him how to fail without shame. The version who bought him his first tools but gave so few words to go with them. On the shelf above my head sat a small metal sculpture he made when he was 10. A crooked little boat welded wrong in almost every way. I kept it because I thought it was important to remember where he started. Now I realized the boy who made it probably needed me to tell him it was good enough at least for a beginning. I never did. I picked it up and turned it in my hands. The metal was cold, but not as cold as the distance that had grown between us. Sometimes a father spends years believing he's protecting his son, only to find he's been building walls instead. I wasn't sure when the anger had started to fade. Maybe it hadn't faded at all. Maybe I had simply run out of ways to blame him without looking straight at myself. The workshop felt smaller as the thought settled. The truth will do that. It shrinks a room until there's nowhere left to stand but in the light. Outside, the gutters dripped in slow rhythm. Ice giving way to water. Winter surrendering by degrees. Even the hardest metal softens under steady heat. I watched the droplets fall, each one a tiny reminder that no season lasts forever. Not even the kind you create in your own house. I set the little boat back on the shelf a little straighter this time. My hand stayed there a moment longer than needed, steadying it, maybe steadying myself. I didn't want to destroy Dylan or make him pay. That thought had never sat right with me, even when the hurt was fresh. What I wanted now was different. Clearer. I wanted to put the truth back in its rightful place, not to win, not to punish, but to keep him from losing himself in a story built on fear and performance. My phone buzzed on the workbench, the screen lighting the room for a second. A calendar reminder, nothing important, but the glow reflected off the old metal and made the workshop look almost warm. I walked over, silenced it, and let the dark come back. The storm ahead hadn't changed. It was still coming heavy and close, and I could feel its pressure in the quiet more than the air. But something in me had shifted. Not enough to make peace, not enough to forgive everything, but enough to step forward without the weight of anger dragging behind me. I stood in the middle of the workshop, hands in my pockets, listening to the melting ice tap the ground. The sound was soft, steady, patient. A rhythm old as winter, and older than the mistakes between fathers and sons. For the first time in a long while, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a place to start again. The garage settled into silence again after the heater clicked off. The air cooled around me, brushing my hands, as if reminding me there was no turning back from what I had decided. I stood feeling the weight in my knees and picked up the manila envelope from the workbench. The light overhead hummed soft and steady, casting a faint gold edge along the flap. It was the closest thing to calm I'd felt in weeks. Outside, the early winter morning was still dark. The pickup engine turned over slow, coughing once before settling into a low, familiar rumble. I pulled out of the driveway, watching the thin line of frost stretch across the street. The town was waking in pieces, porch lights glowing one by one like small lanterns. My hands tightened on the wheel, not from anger this time, but from a quiet commitment that felt heavier than steel. At the bank's compliance office, the building lights were already on. A woman in a navy coat held the door for me without looking up from her phone. Inside, the carpet muted every footstep. A man behind the desk glanced at the paperwork I handed him, then at me. His brow creased as he followed the lines of the reused signature, comparing dates, nodding slightly with each page. He said in a measured voice that they would initiate the audit immediately. His tone carried no judgment, no pity, just procedure, but something in the pause after he spoke felt respectful, as if he understood more than he could say. When I stepped back outside, The sun was just spilling over the rooftops, sharp and cold. I stood there for a moment, letting the light hit my face, letting the air clear the last of whatever doubt had lingered. By noon, the notice went out to the shareholders. Mandatory meeting. Full attendance required. I parked a block away from the office building and walked the rest of the distance. The sidewalks were salted, but patches of ice still clung to the edges. Every step felt steady, focused. The building itself was all glass and steel, the kind of structure meant to look invincible. My reflection in the doors looked older than I remembered, but there was something unshakable in the way I stood. Inside the conference room, the noise dimmed as I entered. People shifted in their seats. Someone cleared their throat. Sabrina sat near the end of the long table, a pale beige coat draped over her chair. Her smile tightened when she saw me, polite, but brittle. Dylan sat 2 seats away from her. His hands were clasped, knuckles, white eyes on the table. No one spoke. I walked to the center of the room and placed the manila envelope down. The soft thud carried farther than I expected, echoing off glass walls. I could feel the attention settle around me, not hostile, just waiting. I looked at Dylan. The boy I taught to weld had shadows under his eyes now. Grown-up shadows. He lifted his head just enough for our eyes to meet. There was fear there, and something behind the fear that struck deeper than anger ever could. I said one sentence, steady and quiet, the way you set a tool down when you don't intend to lift it again. This is the truth. What you do with it is up to you. A chair scraped. Someone inhaled sharply. The room held still. No one reached for the envelope, but every eye was locked on it, as if touching it might set off something none of them were prepared to face. Sabrina shifted forward, lips parting. But before she spoke, a board member near her leaned back, crossing his arms at a gaze fixed on her with a sharpness that cut the air. Her voice stalled in her throat. Another board member tapped a pen against the table once, then stopped abruptly, as if he realized everyone could hear his pulse in that sound. Dylan's eyes dropped to the envelope. I watched his chest rise and fall, shallow, uneven. He reached out as if to touch it, but his hand froze mid-air. For a moment, he wasn't the man in tailored suits giving speeches about self-made success. He was the kid sitting beside me in the workshop, trying to weld a clean line, glancing up for approval. He said quietly, without lifting his eyes, "Dad, did you really think I meant to?" His voice broke off. It wasn't guilt that stopped him, nor shame. It was the weight of recognizing how far his story had drifted from ours. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to punish him, but because the truth between a father and a son doesn't always need words to settle. Sometimes silence makes its own shape. I turned toward the door. No one tried to stop me. The room didn't erupt. No accusations, no defense, no excuses. Just a thick, heavy quiet that felt like the moment before a storm breaks, or before something long buried starts to thaw. As I reached the hallway, the glass wall reflected the conference table behind me. I saw Dylan stand slowly, his gaze still locked on the envelope. His shoulders, once squared with confidence, dipped just enough to show he understood what that pile of paper really meant. I kept walking. The door closed softly behind me, cutting off the last echo of the room. The corridor was empty, lit by cool white lights. My footsteps moved in a slow rhythm across the tiles, steady and unhurried. At the far end, a window overlooked the parking lot. Frost clung to the edges of the glass. Outside, a gust of wind lifted a swirl of dry leaves, spinning them across the asphalt. I stopped, resting my hand lightly on the windowsill, the cold coming through the glass pressed against my palm, grounding me. Behind me, silence stretched heavier than any winter wind, slipping through broken glass. The drive home carried a strange quiet, with it the kind that settles into your coat and follows you through the door. I sat for a long time in the truck, before stepping inside, watching the street lamps hum against the cold. I thought the night was finished, that whatever came next would wait for morning, but life rarely follows the neat timing we imagine. It was close to 2 when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, the sound faint but sharp in the stillness. Dad, his voice small, frayed at the edges, the way metal bends right before it snaps. What do I do now? For a moment I didn't move. There was an instinct in me, an old and unhelpful one, that wanted to let the call ring again, to make him sit with the weight he had created. But the feeling passed like a shadow slipping under a door. I grabbed my keys and headed back into the cold. The engine coughed awake, the headlights cutting across the empty road, as if showing me exactly where I needed to go. Dylan's house looked different that night. Still modern, still too large for a man his age, but something in the glass and angles felt hollow, like the building itself knew its foundations had been shaken. The porch light was on a lonely glow in the dark. He opened the door before I knocked, standing there in sweatpants and an old college hoodie I hadn't seen in years. His shoulders sagged, and for a second he looked like the boy who once brought me broken radios and asked if we could fix them together. In the kitchen, he kept pacing around the island, fingers tapping the stone surface. Every few steps he would inhale sharply, as if steadying himself, then lose the breath halfway. I waited. Patience is a kind of mercy. He finally sat, rubbing his eyes with both hands. It's all falling apart. They froze our accounts. 2 partners walked today. The audit team keeps calling. I don't know where to start. I pulled out a chair beside him and slid a notepad across the counter. We start with what's true. Everything else follows. He nodded, swallowing hard. His hands trembled just enough for me to notice. I didn't speak to it. A man deserves a little dignity, even in collapse. We made calls. First to his CPA, then to a lawyer who understood compliance better than either of us. We talked through penalties disclosures that needed correcting, contracts that had to be reissued. The lawyer spoke in calm, clipped phrases, guiding him step by step, reminding him where the line had been crossed and how to walk back from it without lying again. Each correction felt like resetting a bone, painful but necessary. Around 4, the house grew quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after the worst has already happened. Dylan leaned back on the stool, staring at the ceiling. I could see something shifting in him, a slow collapse of pride, the rebuilding of something more honest underneath. He started to speak twice, but stopped both times, like the words weighed too much to lift. On the 3rd try, he managed. I didn't think anyone would trust me if they knew how much help I had growing up. I just wanted to, I don't know, look strong enough. You don't look strong by hiding where you come from, I said. You look strong by standing in it. He looked at me, then really looked as if he hadn't done that in years. His eyes were red, but clearer than I'd seen them since the day he launched his first project from my garage. Sunlight was climbing over the horizon when he stood and asked if he could borrow my truck. When he returned later that afternoon, he was carrying the oak and steel table we had built together, the same one that Sabrina once called a rustic Etsy find. He backed the truck into my driveway, and the 2 of us lifted the table out with a care that felt almost ceremonial. We set it in the middle of the workshop. Dust coated the surface in a thin gray sheet, soft and even, like untouched snow. Dylan reached for a clean rag on my toolbox. His hand paused in mid-air. I watched his throat tighten before he spoke. I always knew you built it. I shouldn't have let anyone say different. His voice cracked on the last word. He closed his eyes for a second, steadying himself. I felt something press against my ribs. Not anger, not pride exactly, but a kind of ache that comes when truth finally shows itself after years of being bent out of shape. I picked up another rag and started wiping the opposite corner. He worked the other side. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. The workshop filled with the quiet sound of cloth against wood. Two steady rhythms that slowly found the same pace, like breath sinking between people who hadn't stood this close in a long time. When the dust cleared, the grain of the oak showed through again, strong and unmistakable. Dylan rested his palm on it, tracing the seam where steel met wood. The gesture was small, but it felt like the start of something being set right. He whispered something I barely heard. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I didn't answer. Sometimes the surest way to break a fragile moment is to put too many words in it. We stood there until the workshop lights hummed back to full brightness, the kind that makes every tool cast a clean shadow. Outside, the late-day wind moved across the yard, thin and cool, brushing against the doorframe, like a reminder that nothing stays broken if you're willing to repair it piece by piece. I stepped back from the table and let the silence settle between us, steady and honest. It wasn't the silence of anger anymore. It was the kind a man stands inside when he knows the truth has finally done its work. The quiet in Dylan's kitchen felt different that night, as if the air itself had settled after too many long months of circling storms. I sat for a moment with my hands flat on the table, letting the calm move through me in small, steady breaths. It wasn't the kind of stillness that comes from distance or anger. It was the kind a man finally reaches when truth has done all it can do and nothing more needs to be forced. A year had passed since everything cracked open. Life had not rushed to mend itself, but piece by piece it had found a way. And now I was back here in the house I once saw only from the outside, sharing a simple dinner at a table that didn't need to impress anyone. Dylan cooked, nothing fancy, just seasoned chicken and roasted vegetables, the kind of meal a man makes when he is still learning how to take care of himself. He moved quietly around the kitchen, and every so often his eyes flicked toward me with a steadiness I hadn't seen since he was a boy. When we sat down to eat, he spoke with a calm that didn't need to defend or perform. His voice was lower grounded, as if he had finally stopped running from his own shadow. We talked about work, about the cold Michigan winter coming early, about the garage heater I still hadn't replaced. He asked questions, listened without rushing. It felt like talking to a man, not someone trying to outrun a past he was ashamed of. After dinner, he cleared the plates, and I watched him for a moment, remembering all the times I had pushed him harder than I should have. 1,000 moments of frustration flashed through my mind, softened now by the knowledge that we had both grown past them. He came back from the living room, carrying his laptop. There was a quiet hesitation in his steps, the kind that hinted he had thought about this moment more than once. He set the laptop down and sat beside me. His hand hovered over the touchpad before he finally said in a low, steady voice that almost trembled at the edges, "There's something I want you to see." The screen lit up and a video opened. At first, all I saw was his face under warm studio lights older than the last time I had really looked at him steadier. He wasn't wearing a suit or trying for that polished shine his old team used to chase. Just a simple gray shirt, his hair pulled back, eyes clear. He took a breath in the video, long and unguarded. "I'm not self-made," he said. "The foundation I stand on was built by my father." For a second, the room felt smaller, the air thicker. My hand tightened just slightly on the table's edge. Not in anger. Something else. Something that felt like a knot I'd carried for years finally loosening. He continued in the video, speaking gently, without drama. My dad worked with his hands. He welded the first dream I ever had into shape, taught me what it means to build something right before you try to build it big. I wouldn't be here without him. The words landed in me with a quiet weight. Not heavy, not painful, just true. And maybe that's what had been missing all along. I glanced at Dylan beside me. His shoulders were tense, waiting for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe understanding. There was a moment where neither of us moved, and the silence between us wasn't empty. It held everything we had walked through, everything we had broken, and somehow everything we had survived. He finally let out a breath. "I should have said it sooner," he whispered. I put my hand on his shoulder, not gripping, not guiding, just being there. The way I wished I had learned to be earlier in his life. His eyes closed for a second, and he leaned into the gesture almost imperceptibly, but enough for me to feel the shift. We sat there like that for a while. No words, just presence. When I stood to leave, the house felt warmer than when I arrived. Not from the heating system, but from the way a home feels when truth has been spoken inside it. Dylan walked me to the door. His hand rested briefly on the frame, as if he wasn't quite ready for the night to end. "Come by next week," he said softly. "I'd like that," I nodded. That was enough. Outside, the porch light glowed across the long driveway, spreading in a gentle arc that touched the asphalt and the quiet night air. I paused at the bottom of the steps and looked back at it. A year ago, I had stood on the outside of that light, shivering against a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Now the same light fell across my boots, steady and warm. I walked toward my truck, listening to the soft crunch of gravel under each step. The sky above was a deep blue, the kind that holds the last bit of day before giving in to night. A breeze moved through the trees, carrying the faint smell of pine and something like renewal. When I reached the driver's door, I rested my hand on the cold metal for a moment. No rush, no weight on my chest, just a quiet understanding that some storms end not with thunder, but with a single steady light waiting on a porch. I opened the door, slid inside, and sat there without turning the engine on. The house behind me glowed softly, one warm square of light in the winter darkness. Truth had found its place. And in the silence of that cold night, I realized I had too. The wind brushed against the windows as I finally turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, low and familiar, carrying me forward into the quiet.